Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to you all at the Lignite Energy Council, to Jason, the great staff that you have. I've been working with Retha and Kay and a phenomenal staff here, so thank you to all of you. Today, we're going to talk about the common sense clean energy revolution. And as I was thinking about the name of the presentation last night and all the crazy things that have been going on recently regarding reliability, I was thinking that maybe I ought to rename the presentation to California Energy Policy, Future or Farce, because California is doing a lot of unusual things. I think is the proverbial canary in the coal mine, so to speak, and I believe will be the first state to fail from investing heavily in intermittent solar and wind. Today, I want to talk about these things. Who are your crazy California neighbors? We'll talk about California's aggressive climate policies, what's really going on and what's really important and what customers want from us in this clean energy movement, and then ultimately some ideas for strategy. Ultimately, what we all want is a reasonable energy policy. We want a fair and balanced policy. And I work with electric utilities in California. Our job is to keep the lights on. And we're kind of technology agnostic. If there's a technology that is dispatchable, that can provide power at all hours of the day, then we're happy with that. That's more or less how electric utilities think. We want decisions that are based on real life experience, facts and logic, and we have high respect for reliability and affordability. And the affordability element is something that we get hammered on constantly by our customers, by our regulators, and it's something that is just on our shoulder that we have to pay attention to all the time. Now, occasionally you might get an email or a text, or you might be called out for a second. So I want you to know more or less what the conclusions are of today's talk in case you get distracted. And the bottom line is that it's confusing. The future is confusing. The most important element is to get in the game and stay in the game. What I've seen just from the first day of your conference is really how engaged you all are, and that's fantastic. The number of political people that have been here, that have been on screen, you are involved, and keep that going. So more about the ending here. The climate is changing. It always has been changing. Through the millennia. Now there's a green revolution. It's going on as well. We cannot stop. We can't stop certain policymakers from passing their green laws and regulations. We've tried. We have literally tried to do this, to bring common sense to their decisions. And we fail. We continue to fail. I'm in California. They come up with wacky ideas. We say, well, what do you really want to do? And we try to move them in the right direction, but we've decided we can no longer stop them. But we know that progress is going to slow because of the various problems that we're seeing, things like supply chain issues. So there's only so much we can do and we can argue about. What we see as problems, and the reason why we think it's going to slow down, is that there's this overemphasis on a single strategy of solar, wind, and batteries, and we just think that's a dumb idea. If the goal is to decarbonize, then we need an all-of-the-above strategy. We've seen the supply chain slow down, and we think that that's going to continue for decades. Prices rising, we have materials challenges as well. And of course, as I mentioned, and you'll hear this a few times, concern about reliability and affordability, which we are seeing nationwide. We need dispatchable, carbon neutral power if we're going to move forward to accomplish these big goals that policymakers set out for us. What's interesting is that the enviros, we'll just call them that for shorthand, they are opposed to what we think are good ideas. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage. They're opposed to nuclear, they're opposed to clean coal, because it's their religion. That's why. That's the only reason why. We think that's a dumb idea to oppose that. We need all the above. Has anybody been to the Athabasca Glacier? That's on the ice highway between Banff and Jasper. Has anybody been there? You've been there. Okay. A few others? Anybody here? Okay. You've been to this glacier? So you go to the visitor center at this glacier. It's one of the most studied glaciers over the past 130 years. You go to the visitor center, and this is a picture that is more or less from the visitor center. It's really just behind me here. And they have these markers, and the markers indicate where the glacier was in those years. So at that marker, you see where the glacier was in 1890, and you sort of walk along, hike up to the glacier over time to see its recession. And so we're here on this side of the road, and then you walk along closer to the road, and you see here's where it was in 1908. And this is supposed to be an awakening into what's going on with climate change. And then you cross the road and say, oh, here's where the glacier was in 1925, and then 1942, and you see we're getting closer to the glacier, and then here it is in 2000, and it's just up ahead, and then 2006. And it got to this point, and I thought, what was going on in 1890 that was emitting carbon? And the answer was nothing. Nothing was going on. If you look, I didn't put the graphic in here, but if you look at the graphic of when carbon emissions really started shooting up, it's like 1950. Cars started around like 1908. I mean, we had an industrial revolution in the 1700s, and then another wave in the 1800s, but no significant carbon emissions. Yet the glacier was still receding. And I thought, this is actually a demonstration of why the recession of the glacier is not the result of climate change or carbon emissions. Anyway, the Athabasca Glacier, well studied, and the climate's been changing for millennia. Now, people do say because of carbon emissions, we are accelerating that process. Maybe, nevertheless, that's the religion that's out there. Well, why is climate change happening? Some alternative theories. One is people can see it. When I was in Florida, I had a colleague in California, and I used to argue with him all the time about climate change. He would say, you got to do more, you've got to invest more, efficiency, renewables. It was like, in Florida, there was just a hot season and a less hot season. And I didn't see much climate changing. And when I moved to California, I noticed there's a lot of microclimates in the state. There's the Central Valley, which is hot. There's the coast, which is cooled by the Pacific Ocean. There's a variety, something like 10 microclimates, and they have wild swings of their temperature. And people see differences in their local climates, and therefore they pay closer attention to the fact that, or the concept that the climate is changing. They see the climate changing in the area, and they say, obviously, climate's changing. We also have things like the internet and cable TV, and disasters and fear get a lot of eyeballs. Not that you are a fearmonger, but I did find this picture online, so I had to include it. So thank you, Kevin. Nevertheless, when we turn on the TV, we see disasters not just in our region, not just around the country, but around the world. We are fed this stuff from around the planet, the worst stuff from around the planet. and cable TV and internet and various social medias and so on. They can't help themselves because that's what gets our attention. So as a result, we sort of see the same thing. Oh, the climate must be changing. And of course, we have emotional differences. This is just personal stuff. It's a polarizing issue. It's a religion to some people, and they believe that it is existential. It is about the existence of the planet. And then a lot of things get blamed on climate change. And some of these things you can sort of make a little bit of sense. Mountains will grow more because when there's less ice, the mountains will be more uplift. And bumpier airplane rides because the ground will heat up more and the air will be less stable. And this is super bears. This is a combination of grizzly and polar bears. They're starting to mate together. And then some weird stuff like sharks might eat you. I don't know what that one is for, why that's blamed on climate change. No more summer barbecues. It'll be too hot for us to have summer barbecues. Food will be scarce, and when you do eat it, it will kill you. So that's also a weird one. Everything is blamed on climate change, and it's just kind of a drag no matter where you are. So we have to move away from people with that level of religion because they're not basing their conversations and their decisions on facts. There are opportunities. So electrification is one of just the regular stuff that we're already electrifying, in a house or using in a house, for example, use more of heat pumps. This is a major strategy for us in our industry. If we're going to take over transportation, whether or not that can be done, it's not our job to decide when and where electric vehicles. They will slow down the advancement of electric vehicles on its own based on supply chain and materials issues. But nevertheless, we're moving in that direction. We're the suppliers of that electricity to charge those electric vehicles. And they need to be charged at night with baseload. Obviously, reliability is in question. When I talk about solar and wind, I always put the adjective in beforehand, either variable or interruptible. And when I talk about conventional energy, I use the word dispatchable because I want those additional adjectives for people to hear those words and know that value. Energy storage is hard to do. It brings zero value. It brings no additional resource. It's just obviously storage. It's not easy. We're going down this road. It's just additional expenditure we have to have just to make variable solar and wind viable. And then affordability, prices are rising, and they rise faster with renewables. And this, I believe, will lead to political disruption. We'll talk about that, and I'll show you how that's happened. The Chinese symbol for crisis is made up of two words, opportunity and danger. So yeah, we have opportunity, and yeah, there's a little bit of risk associated with this as well as we move forward. It's our job as professionals to try to take measured steps to make this happen and to take advantage of that opportunity. So let's talk about California. So who are these crazy neighbors? Well, you know what? Believe it or not, we're really just like you. We're engineers, utility people, suppliers that are just trying to keep the lights on. And we are, as I said, significantly concerned about reliability and affordability. We used to use the word, there was another ability, sustainability, but now nobody uses that word anymore, and it's decarbonization. Anyway, that's the big thing. We talk about that regularly in California. And we are seeing the greening of our boards, our public boards. People are getting elected to city councils and utility boards that are being supported by the Sierra clubs and so on. It's just an interesting development. And it's something that, as a result, they bring up issues that we have to work on. And it's changed the nature of the conversation. And of course, we have very green policymakers. And I would say that liberals certainly are focused on climate change, but even conservatives admit that climate change is going on. So that this is California, and that's where they are. Nobody really questions that. So our recent California policy is based on this. We're just praying that we can keep the lights on. That's literally it, because we have too many intermittent renewables, solar and wind. We just do, and we just hope that the weather doesn't get too hot at certain times of the year when we're short of power. I left my phone down there. I was going to play an Amber Alert for you because, and I know we heard that yesterday from federal government, because that's how we manage our energy. When we reached a peak a little over a year ago, Labor Day, we had to issue a statewide Amber Alert and have signage on roads, and everybody got an emergency alert message on their phone saying to conserve energy now for health and safety. And that's not wise energy policy. We're usually behind the scenes just flicking the light switch on and doing our job. To be front and center in a silly way like that is bad policy. But that's literally what California is doing. Here's why California does it. This is a quote from our current governor, Gavin Newsom, who said, "The future happens here first." And California is once again showing the world what real climate action looks like. So this is a mantra. This is a bumper sticker philosophy. Now, California has done some good things in this space. They actually have brought solar and wind costs down over the decades. That's a good thing. They've shared a lot of ideas with other states. And whether it's the right direction or the wrong direction, California is leading. We're going, who knows? These are the policies that we have, and actually some states are a little more aggressive. By 2030, we have to have 60% of our power supply come from renewable energy, and there's a definition of what that is. Hydropower is not included in that, strangely. And then from 2030 to 2045, that additional 40%, that just has to come from a decarbonized power supply. So hydropower will count there. We believe nuclear would count. And any other resource that has zero carbon. And where we are today is at 34%. So in the next little over 6 years, we have to get to 60%. And this is really hard. As publicly owned utilities, we are out there in the market today looking for power supply projects, intermittent solar and wind, renewables that like geothermal that have higher capacity factors, and the projects aren't there. And the time frame for developing them is getting shorter, or is the time frame is shortening. That's 6 years. And we have land use issues. We can't just put these things anywhere. We want to build large-scale projects. It's a problem. And I believe, my prediction is that we're going to get to 2028, 29, and regulators and legislators will say, okay, well, we need a little more time. We need to go to 2033 because we'll accomplish it then. We're not going to be able to accomplish it. We're just not going to be able to. So that's my prediction, is because they'll say, well, when the forward-thinking previous legislators made that goal, they did it without knowing if the technology would be there. It's showing up, and it's going to come soon. But they're going to backtrack. The reason why I know that is because we're already talking about that. We're having these conversations right now in 2023 about our inability to meet those goals, because we can see the responses to our request for proposals. And we're telling our regulators and legislators, not in a bad way, we're bringing them closer and saying we've got some problems. We're spending tens of billions of state money, public funds. Over $60 billion have been allocated on projects. And we're buying down the cost of uneconomic projects, of course. Plus, we now have the IRA, the federal government as well. So we're investing a lot of money. And just the impact on greenhouse gas emissions, in the utility sector, we're about 14%. I'm sorry, of all greenhouse gases in California, we're about 14%. Transportation's 41%. So this is the goal, is to move forward with transportation. We say, focus on them, and regulators and legislators say, well, take them over with clean power. Like, okay, let's go do it. So last year in Labor Day, we had shortages. And what happens is that in August and September timeframe, the sun sets earlier and it stays hot. And it certainly stays hot. And if we have a heat wave, then that puts stress on the grid. We don't have enough power supply because we're relying on the solar power into the evening. And if the sun sets early, then we don't have that power supply. So we know right now we are 1,000 megawatts short statewide in August, in every August, and we're 3,500 megawatts short in September because we don't have that sun in the sky, which equates to about a 1.5% to 6% shortage statewide if there's bad weather, if it's hot. That's pretty rotten policy to be basing your energy industry off of. We know this today. We are building new natural gas plants. Hardly anybody knows this, because just to fill in that gap, that time frame in August and September, the state is paying to build 20 and 30 megawatt simple cycle gas plants just to fill in that peak. And municipal utilities are great hosts for those facilities because you just need to be near a substation or within 1,000 yards of a substation, so 1,000 feet of a substation. So we've got a lot of good sites. We're planning to shut down a nuclear power plant, which has to remain open now, Diablo Canyon. Supposed to shut down in 2025, and that's remaining open. If that's 2,500 megawatts, we would have just been adding to our problem, so it's staying open. And we have natural gas plants, older natural gas plants. They're once-through cooling plants that are literally on the coast using ocean water for cooling. And they're not the most pleasant looking in that environment, like right at the beach. And a lot of cities want them closed. And it's a good idea to close them. It's a better idea to build a new facility about a mile or two inland. That's more efficient. But we can't get the authority to do that, so these plants have to stay open, these eyesores have to stay open, and they'll be open indefinitely. So it's an interesting conundrum that those that want those plants to close have to look at them because they can't get them closed because we need the power. And then NERC has been saying regularly that there's reliability problems across the country. And their winter assessment from 22-23 said there's problems in these areas across the country, and MISO is one of them. Reserves, they reported, are 5% lower from the previous year, and we are vulnerable to a cold weather incident. And we know these things have happened. They're happening almost every year in different parts of the country. So NERC is sounding the alarm. The question then becomes who's in charge? And the answer is public service commissions around the country. They're the ones that can order construction. And they are usually put in place by a governor and a legislature. Sometimes there's confirmation. And they're saying, oh, let's accomplish big goals. And then the Public Service Commission has to say, well, these people put me in the job. I'm not sure exactly what to do here. So there's a lot of dysfunction going on. But those are the ones ultimately in charge, and they're not doing their job. Last year on this heat wave, just very briefly, I just want to show you what happened. We had this peak load in the state. This is from the California Independent System Operator. There's two lines there. There's a peak and then there's a net peak. The net peak is taking out the rooftop solar on people's homes. We had that cell phone alert I showed you earlier, and we dropped 2,500 megawatts of load in less than 30 minutes. So it was very effective at doing that. And this was what was generating during that time. So we had battery discharge. Now we have battery discharge of 2,000 megawatts, which is good. We have 4,000 megawatts of batteries on the system, but they weren't available. Half of them weren't available because batteries discharge and charge economically throughout the day. They're constantly charging and discharging throughout the day based on what the cost of electricity might be in the market. It's a computer program. So when we needed the batteries at 550, only half of them were available. So, and no one knows if it's going to be hot. There's a prediction, but there's not a strong coordination on the batteries. The only way to use batteries this way is just to build more batteries, because they're always going to be discharging on and off. So batteries are not as reliable as we like to think. So we had imports of hydropower from the Northwest, thank you, but if they had a heat wave too, we wouldn't have had that, but we did have that. And look what got us through. More than half of the load was the gas fleet. We have very few coal electrons, none in the state, but we have some coming in from the rest of the Southwest. But this is the punchline is that we're relying on our fossil fleet. We have to have that to keep the lights on. And some say, well, we just need to expand transmission and bring in power from elsewhere. And that's a reasonable idea. It's hard to build transmission. It's something we're all trying to do. That's a good thing. We want to get more product to market. Costs are going up. You don't have to look at the details of these graphics. They just show that costs are going up. This is work that CMUA has done to show what the investments in transmission look like. And they expect just the transmission investment on a typical bill of 572 kilowatt hours, which is kind of low, but that's California average. $21 we're paying today to jumping to $57 in just a few years with investments in transmission. That's a huge jump. And this uses 2008 numbers as the baseline, but prices in California are triple the rest of the country, and that's unsustainable as well. The real-time prices now are, on average for us, munis and co-ops, around 17 cents on average. For the investor-owned utilities, closer to it ranges from 25 and peaking prices to 40 cents a kilowatt hour. Crazy. Yes, I hear the murmurs. Yes, it's crazy, unsustainable. And now there's new headwinds for wind. We're seeing a lot higher costs just for wind, and offshore projects are now being canceled because offshore is extremely expensive, 114 bucks a megawatt hour on average, just bus bar cost. So significantly higher, doubling in price basically from 2 years ago. Bottom line is, you can see this. It's all these unintended consequences are going to add up until we're just sitting there and it comes crashing down back on us. So now there's this new proposal from the investor-owned utilities. I'm sorry, it was directed from the legislature to the Public Service Commission, which ordered the investor-owned utilities to come up with a new rate proposal to lower the impact of their high rates on customers. So it's sometimes portrayed as a proposal from the investor-owned utilities, but it's not. They're being ordered to do this, and they worked together on it. And they're basically, the idea is to lower their rate from 40 cents on average to 20 cents. Okay, well, those are two big numbers anyway, and 20 is the bottom, but anyway, lower the kilowatt hour rate. And then base the fixed charge on your income. So if you make, we'll just look at Southern California Edison and Pacific Gas and Electric, because San Diego Gas and Electric to the right is even higher. If you make less than $28,000, your fixed charge is 15 bucks. Okay, that's about what it is today. If you make 28 to 69,000, your fixed charge is $20. Well, a little bit more, but remember, you're paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour now. 69 to 180,000, your fixed charge jumps to $51. And if you make above $180,000 for a family, that's $92 a month for your fixed charge. Well, the proposals were made and people, their heads exploded. Legislators didn't like it, consumers didn't like it, and it's stalled for now, but there's dominoes. This is California trying to figure out if prices are too high, then all the investments in these high-cost intermittent renewables, they can't be made. And the power source for electric vehicles becomes more expensive. So, punchline, hold on to your dispatchable capacity. I know you want to do this. That's a message we have to deliver everywhere we possibly can. So what are those opportunities? Well, electric vehicles. They might not work here in North Dakota, but we can supply so that they work elsewhere. And they're happening around the world. Today we have about 4 million electric vehicles, and that's expected to grow to 56 million. This is around the world. We're not going to replace every single car, but it will grow over time. And all this rapid EV growth, it definitely strains the grid, and we have to make sure that these cars don't charge at the same time, because it's hard to rebuild the grid that we have. And so a water heater, 4.5 kW, heat pump, 5 kW, that's an opportunity for us as well. More cold weather heat pumps that can help build load. And then adding a level 2 charger in our house, 7.2 kW, that's more than a heat pump. That's a lot. And ultimately, we couldn't handle 280 million cars in the US. It's just unsustainable. So that's just something that I think we can't do. The only way we could do it is with nighttime baseload capacity. That's where you come in. We also have another bizarre regulation. It's a zero emission vehicle goal. And in a nutshell, by 2027, for fleets, for all fleets, private fleets, public fleets, all new vehicles have to be electric. Now, these are like commercial scale vehicles. This is extremely difficult to do. The vehicles don't exist. It's 2024 basically, and by 27, new vehicles. Now you can accomplish it with pickups, but even Ford just announced they're having a problem with their F-150 Lightning, that they weren't going to be able to produce it as quickly as they thought they would. So we went to our regulators in the rulemaking process and we said, when there's an emergency, we have to restore power. And if we're restoring power with a vehicle whose fuel we don't have because there's a power outage, we think that's kind of like grounds for a loophole, that we shouldn't have to have an electric bucket truck. And when other fuels, like maybe hydrogen or some other, renewable created fuel comes along, we'll do that. And the regulator said, nope, we're not going to do it. We can't do it. Like, why? Well, we have to show the vehicle manufacturers that there's going to be a market. Well, you can still show them we're just a small piece of the market. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So we were successful going to the legislature and explaining it and got a small carve out for that. But even still, regulators refused to do the logical thing. And recently, diesel truck makers have created a deal to phase out big diesel big rigs by 2036. And there's a lot of other states that are interested in doing that as well. Anybody here have an electric bike? Okay, a few of you. I mean, I love electric bikes. I don't have one, but I really want to get one. They're really cool, and who would have thought that they would be sort of exploding? Well, hopefully they don't explode. A few have caught on fire because of batteries. But the market is growing significantly. Now, they're not a huge load, but nevertheless, a lot of things are electrified that we didn't predict. And we have by the way, injuries are up from electric bikes because now people are going a little too fast, and bikes kind of like go through intersections without stopping and so on, and how they're doing it faster. And they're the highest form of transportation with the poorest safety record. But these are the future electric minis. These are kind of like electric bikes, but they're enclosed. So they're most weather, at least rainy weather. And autonomous electric trucking. Well, it's been shown that they're good from point to point. They're good from once you get on the highway to where they need to go, to the exit where they need to get off the highway, but they're bad in town. We shouldn't realize. So to take their cargo off at the highway and then have a driver drive them in town, that could work. And because we're short on drivers, it actually may be a solution for the future, but that's another market. And range anxiety is an issue for electric vehicles. A lot of retailers are installing chargers because charging sort of economy, charging, shopping is a thing. Retailers want you to come, charge your car, go shopping, and then you go to that particular place. Like Cracker Barrel is investing heavily in EV charging because they want you to eat at Cracker Barrel. So the bottom line on electric vehicles, they're growing. It's difficult to ignore them. That's just happening. Again, it may not be the right fit here, but they're happening in a lot of places. They are high end, but the costs are coming down. It is a growth opportunity for us. We know there are limitations. I think some of those limitations on materials and minerals will slow the process down. It's something that you need to monitor continuously because you'll be expected to supply it. And in the future, we'll actually see flying taxis. There are prototypes out there. They look more like this. They look like big drones that can hold a few people. And I've seen a real live one. It's called a Joby. And their market is from Manhattan to LaGuardia Airport in 7 minutes when driving will take an hour. So there's certain people that will pay a lot of money for that. Nevertheless, that's something that we'll see in the future. So what do we do next? Well, the clean advocates say solar, wind, and batteries, and that's it. That's it. And that's what we hear. Fortunately, you've got different logic going on, more common sense here. I'm glad you're paying attention to that. We think it's a dumb idea. I think it's a dumb idea to just focus on solar, wind, and batteries. The real solution is what we've heard several times, is all the above. And we need to keep saying that. We need to say that at Rotary clubs and chambers of commerce and all the grassroots community meetings that we possibly can. We did a survey. What do our customers want? And bottom line is they said, do your job. Just focus on reliability, keep the lights on, focus on controlling costs, then you're doing great. Thank you for doing your job. And then they also said, communicate with me. Spend some money talking to your customers. And there's a lot of value in getting out signage, whatever your message is. And I got off the airplane and I saw there was signage about from coal industry right there about reliability and affordability and jobs and economic impact. That's fantastic. We need to keep doing that. We need to, and I think you're doing a good job with your politicians and regulators. Keep talking about it, and think about talking about it more broadly outside of North Dakota. Some actions. Obviously, stay on top of this electric vehicle development. You want to be able to show that you can be a supplier for that. Know that intermittent renewables does not equal reliability. You know that as well. Conversely, show off your reliability. Talk about your reliability. Research, advocate on that. I mean, you have to get way out in front of it. You're the reliability folks. Investigate, pilot new ideas. When a new idea comes along, look into it. And again, carry that torch because no one else will for us. You're obviously engaged in politics. Stay engaged in politics. A lot of times people talk about climate change and they poop on it. Oh, and I talked about that early on and made a little fun and so on. And then the climate's been changing for millennia. Nevertheless, the climate advocates don't like hearing that, and we could spend all day questioning that. What's more important is to develop wise policies that take advantage of what we can provide to it. So let's spend our time doing that. Let's continue to do more projects and research on clean coal, on carbon capture utilization and storage, looking at a potential hydrogen play. We have 350 years of proven domestic reserves of coal. Well, let's keep using that and keep talking about the national security benefits of that. And brand what you do and your technology as reliability machines. You are supplying reliability to the country. Let's keep talking about that. That's most important, which is be relentless. And like it or not, when there's an outage somewhere, let's pounce on that. When prices go up somewhere, let's pounce on that. Oh, prices are under control here. It's okay. That's putting our best foot forward. And I think we've sort of given up in talking to legislators because we just can't, we haven't really given up, but we just don't have as much influence as we'd like. We can't stop them from doing really dumb things. So our strategy is to talk to local grass tops leaders at chambers of commerce and Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs and so on, because that's where we need to create a groundswell. So is this happening? Well, it almost doesn't matter what we think because the media is sold and perception is reality. It may not be the media here, but the media in a lot of places around the world is. And what I talked about earlier, the climate's changing, the green revolution's happening, there's an overemphasis on one strategy. We need to expand that. And we need to keep talking about reliability and affordability. And common sense policy depends on us working together. We need to show up at meetings like this and share significantly what's going on, what's working with you, and how's that going, and maybe we can introduce some of those ideas elsewhere. Let's keep exchanging ideas. We know that the solution is all the above. People like that. They like hearing that. I mean, the regular people like hearing that. So let's keep talking about that. And again, hold that torch for reliability and affordability. This is the value add that you provide. Very quick, a couple of climate cartoons, and then I'll be done. The guy in the pool on the floaty is saying, after all those years of worry, climate change has turned out to be not so bad. And then the woman in the towel says, but now everyone and their brother wants to move here to Fairbanks. And then here's a bunch of jets all flying to a climate conference, private jets, and led by Air Force One there on the far side. So yeah, they're spending all those fossil fuels going to climate conferences. Here's one from California. California is leading the way in the green energy revolution in the dark. A message from our governor. And another one, marshmallow of the planet that's burning. So bottom line, I like looking at the cartoons on both sides. Our job is to go above the cartoons. Obviously, keep the lights on, control costs. We like to say reliability and affordability, but people don't, they have too many syllables in there. Keep the lights on, control costs, it's simpler. Continue to talk about your dispatchable power and how you're decarbonizing and using CCS, and continue to serve our communities. Let's just keep doing that. So, I love talking about this. I'll be here the rest of the day. My contact information is in the PowerPoint. I know the staff will make that available to you. If we have any follow-up questions, I know our time is limited now, but I look forward to talking with you the rest of the day at the breaks, at lunch, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here with you. Oh, do you want to try a question? I'm happy to.
We do have one.
Hey, Barry, this is maybe just a little bit off topic, but I wonder if the California legislature has talked about the potential for EVs to start fires.
Well, if anybody in the legislature has talked about that, they avoid talking about that. The question is, has anybody talked about EVs starting fires? And it's not the potential for EVs. They do start fires. They can start fires. And Tesla walls or batteries that go on houses, they now have to be put on the outside of the house as opposed to inside the garage. yeah, they do. They can start fires, and that's for the EV industry to worry about. Now, it's not widespread, but it does take place. No, California doesn't want to talk about that. That's the direct answer to your question. Any other questions? And again, I look forward to talking with you.
More coming.
Rest of the day. Oh, one more. Yeah. Yes.
All of the above. I mean, that's a term that has been around for a while, and it sounds really great, but it's not practical anymore because you have competing electrons trying to get on the same infrastructure. And once the carbon-based electron becomes uneconomical, it goes away. And then it turns into one of the above, especially when you can't permit a new carbon-based baseload plant. And so I think it sounds good, it works, but the practicality is the policymakers have a big say on that, and it's just not practical.
Well, are you saying all the above's not practical, or getting rid of all fossil is not practical? Is that what you're
saying all above's not practical because of the political influence in it. Because, I mean, you see utilities everywhere that once they lose the economics of their baseload plant because they can't get on the market, what do they do?
Right. Well,
and so it becomes a one of the above at that point.
Yeah, we're making a huge mistake by putting plants out of the market, and utilities not stepping up and talking about this more frequently, because then it puts pressure on plants to then close, and we have fewer baseload facilities to supply. Well, we're talking fossil facilities. The goal really ought to be 85%. That's because that's where we're going to end up. Well, I mean, maybe in 50 years or 100 years, there might be a technology that is perfectly clean that can supply. And clearly, if we made a huge bet on nuclear, small modular reactors, that would be a way to go. We might get there. We're going to end up in something like, 80-85% of our electrons can be clean in some way, and then the other 10 to 15%. The only way we're going to get there is by experiencing it, by having the outages, by having the emergencies. These policymakers refuse to listen to logic, and I wish there was another way. I wish they would listen to us. I wish that the greenies would listen to us. They don't. We try to bring them closer through a lot of community conversations and discussions, and get the Sierra clubs to the table and so on. And they listen, they understand all the problems, and then they say, yeah, but technology will come along and save us. So it's our job to keep saying the right thing and to keep informing regulators about reliability issues. And ultimately, I don't want to say that if the power goes out, tough luck. I mean, that's not how we operate. We just have to communicate every decision that is being made and what the impacts are on the entire grid. I share your concern. Absolutely, I share your concern. I think we can implement an 85 to 90% clean policy and have much better success. Oh, question back here.
Thank you so much for coming here, and it's really good to hear somebody from California talking about reliability. I think all of us in here have really enjoyed listening to you speak. My question is, California now deals with you kind of manage chaos as far as planned and controlled brownouts. However they do that. What is your level of concern for a call it ERCOT-style event that just shuts the grid down in California from north to south, east to west for a significant period of time?
the grid in California is highly dependent on connections to the west, so we can't do that. I mean, ERCOT only has, is it 2.5 connections basically to, extension cords to the rest of the country. So we can't do that. You're asking about, do we have the ability to, or should we do that?
Will it happen?
Oh, will it happen? No, actually, we're working to try to go the other direction of trying to create a west-wide grid that is more interdependent. And California, needs the rest of the West to serve it because there's just a lot of load in California. It's something like, it's at least a third, maybe 40% of the load in the West. So it's kind of a sink for load. So the state is trying to get more transmission and electrons flowing in and wrapping itself in crazy circles about trying to figure out the color of the electrons that are coming in. Are those green? Are they blue? Are they brown? It's idiotic. Nevertheless, their goal is to expand the grid rather than to try to contract it. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'm sure there's some other conversation that we can have. Thank you all very much.